So, again, thank you everybody for coming today. We are talking about careers in graphic design today with Peter Klassen of PK Digital Creative. We're so excited. I know that Peter has been a mentor for one of our mentorability participants in the past and is just an overall really cool person. Even when we were getting the design done for our marketing of this, our marketer reached out to me and was like, Peter looks really cool. I was like, I know, right? So we have high hopes for this session, and I know that Peter's not going to disappoint. As we get started, I do want to go through and do a land acknowledgement for folks. So let me, sorry, change my screen a little bit. At Mentorability Alberta, we acknowledge that we operate on the traditional territories of Indigenous peoples in what is colonially called Alberta and express gratitude and respect for the land that we use. On our decolonial journey, we pledge to dismantle systemic racism within our organization and commit to advancing reconciliation and equitable partnerships as we continue to engage predominantly in Treaty 4, 6, 7, 8, and 10 territories and the Métis homeland. We recognize that acknowledgement of traditional land is a start, but what is being asked for by Indigenous communities is land back. And we welcome everybody here today to take a moment sometime today to think about the land that you occupy and how you and your families got here and your own relationship with the land. Changing slides. So a little bit of housekeeping before we get started. If you are not the person actively talking, please mute yourself so that we don't get any background noise and information. If you have questions that come up during the presentation, if you're able to hold on to them until the end, that would be much appreciated, and then Peter will be able to address them. If you're afraid of forgetting, you can always put your question into the chat and we can hold it to the end of the presentation so that we can address it then. If you require any technical support, like closed captioning or having issues with your sound or anything like that, please reach out to myself or Susanna, and we can help you in the background to get that sorted out. Changing slides. So a little bit about Mentorability and Mentorability Alberta. Mentorability is a national initiative, and we help to facilitate short-term mentorship moments for people who experience pan disability to gain some of that experience or knowledge and connections to help them in that next step in their career to figure out, is this the right path that I'm on, or what do I need in order to start a career in this area? And as part of that, our industry information sessions are an opportunity for folks to learn about an area that they're interested in or learn about an area that they never even knew existed. So we are always very, very appreciative to our presenters for coming in and sharing their time. If you have any questions about mentorability or want to participate or anything like that, you can reach out to myself or Susanna. I will be sending out an email after this event to just share the link to our YouTube, any notes that came up, things like that. And in that, you'll have our email addresses as well to connect with us. So with that said, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and pass it on over to Peter. So you can take it away, Peter.
Thank you very much. Okay. Hello, everyone. Thanks for being here. And thank you to Mentorability for having me. It's nice to be able to come here and see some folks interested in design because well, it's an industry that I care a lot about. So, without further ado, let's jump into what we're going to be talking about here. I have a quick overview about what topics I'm going to briefly touch on today. And then at the end, hopefully we can get some questions that I can answer for you. And if I can't, direct you to someone who can. So starting off, pull up my fancy slides here. A little about myself. I am a design school graduate. I went to a graphic design school in Nova Scotia. It was originally a 2-year program condensed into a 1-year program with no breaks. It was a little intense, but it was nice to get it done quickly. I've been a solopreneur for about 5 years, running my business, PK Digital Creative, graphic design business. I went the entrepreneur route after graduation because I'm also a touring musician and I spend about 2 to 3 months of any given year on tour. Naturally, bosses and understandably want you in the office, but I have rocking to do. So, I've taken this route. So I have a little more control over my schedule. Not only schedule, but we'll get into that a little later. And yeah, finally, I am a graphic designer. So moving forward, what are we going to talk about? Well, we're going to talk about what exactly do graphic designers do? There seems to be a lot of confusion out there, especially from even employers. Where do we work? What kind of companies do we work at? What does it look like? Do we need any qualifications? Do we need any credentials in order to get the job? And the famous question now is AI going to take my job in the next 5 to 10 years? I don't think so. I'm not worried. Just put a footnote there. So, what is design? Well, graphic design is essentially visual communication. Your client has a message they need to deliver, something to do with their company, something to do with their organization, anything like that. And it's your job to use graphic design principles to find the most efficient way to deliver that message so that the correct audience receives that message in the way that you want them to receive it. Basically, that's what design is. So we have things called design principles. They are based on largely on an early 20th century psychologist named Gestalt, who came up with this theory about how the brain organizes information and perceives patterns. So there's a lot of principles that come from that idea, where the basic idea of his approach is that the whole of anything is greater than its parts. So you are going to come across every situation in graphic design where you will be thinking in this manner. We deal with color and shape psychology and theory. Certain colors evoke different emotions in a viewer. Shapes suggest certain things, such as a circle suggesting togetherness, or a square suggesting, oops, microphone, square suggesting sturdiness because of the way it stands in its space. So we think about things like that. Brand identity is huge in graphic design. Every project you work on, you have to be carefully considering your client's brand identity, which is basically a company's personality. It's a combination of the values, the principles, and the vision that the company or organization has, and they express that through visuals, messaging, and their tone of voice. These are things that are always kept in mind as a designer. You will also sometimes, as a graphic designer, be creating these visuals for a brand. And those are some of the best projects that you can find out there as a full brand identity, because they're worth a lot of money. Print and digital translations. This is a very important part of graphic design that a lot of newcomers who haven't been to design school tend to fall behind on, because there's a lot of digital out there, but people tend to forget that print is still the most tangible form of delivering a message. You're not going to hold on to a flyer and get bombarded with pop-up ads. So these things are still important. Print is important, and print and digital. So when I say digital, I mean anything that is displayed on a screen, be it your smartphone, your computer, or a billboard, or whatever it is. So there's vastly different requirements for graphics when it comes to colors and resolution in between print and digital. And a graphic designer who can translate in between those two is a good graphic designer. You will come across both. I mean, depends where you work, I suppose, but both are essential parts of graphic design. Next, software skills. You've all heard of Photoshop, I'm sure, the famous program where you can put a cat's head on a horse's body if you want. That's just one of the things that you can do. I've never been paid to do that, but hey, you never know. So yeah, what software do we use? Let's go to the next slide and find out. Industry standard software for graphic design is the Adobe Creative Cloud. You won't find a lot of argument from other graphic designers out there. No, Canva and Midjourney are not essential or industry standard. We're going to get into how AI plays a role in graphic design in a little bit here, but these are your main three softwares that are of the utmost importance to know as a graphic designer. So Photoshop, number one, is a pixel-based program. Pixels are the square pieces of visual information that make up a picture. Illustrator is different. It's what's called a vector-based program. Vector graphics are not made of pixels. They're made of little mathematical points. Um, so the great part about those is you can scale them up or down without losing resolution. Illustrator is a program that manipulates vector graphics. You need to know about both of these types of graphics. InDesign now is more of a layout program. It's used heavily with print, but it's also kind of the program that takes anything you've done in Photoshop and Illustrator, ties it together, and then gets it ready for the desired output or the type of file that you would like to output it as. So it's a very powerful program. All three of these, I believe, are essential to your graphic design workflow. There are others. If you are going to move into motion graphics, which is basically graphic design that is animated, um, very different from video editing, by the way. There's things like After Effects, which is also in the Adobe Creative Cloud, just for moving around your graphics. There's Blender which is a free open source, very powerful pipeline for the entire 3D modeling and animation. There are other ones that are paid as well, and they do kind of the similar thing. Blender has a bit of a steep learning curve, as do all of these softwares, really. But any design school will take you through them, and they will teach you how to use them and how to use them properly. And they always send you updates when they make new things with the program, so you can always check out what is new and cool and what fancy AI stuff they have thrown in your software. So where do we work, graphic designers? Well, my personal experience is this room right here. I keep forgetting my camera is mirrored. This room is where I work, but we work everywhere. Believe it or not, every company needs a graphic designer, whether they know it or not, or whether they've admitted it or not. Every company has a communication that they need to make to either the public or to other businesses. Um, so really, you could be working for any company. You could be working for an agency that is an advertising agency, a marketing agency, anything like that are popular places to work. They're very fast paced. Same with print shops or sign shops can be very fast paced as well. A lot of people get started in a print shop, which I think is also a good starting point because you get to really get your feet wet in the print area of design before you move into digital, which can be a bit easier. So it's good to get that bit of experience in the print shop. I did not, however, but my first client out of school was a biannual print magazine. So I did get to hit the ground running with all the print stuff. Print sign shops, agencies, any company. I have a friend who works for Go Auto. She's their go-to graphic designer. She does all the ads, all the things that you see everywhere. So yeah, graphic design's everywhere. It's on anything printed. It's on every screen everywhere that you see. So I mean, every company that has to show anybody anything about their company, that's possibly where you could work. So you can pick a company maybe that or an industry that you're particularly interested in and try to pinpoint that and aim for that, or just take whatever you can get. In the beginning anyways. You can be a freelancer. You can be a solopreneur, I suppose, is kind of what I call myself, just a solitary entrepreneur. You can take contract work, which I've also done. You will want to be careful about your contracts and read them very carefully, which is a lesson that I learned the hard way. Um, so connected to that sort of, like, how hard is it to get a job in graphic design? Well, there's some good news and some bad news. So the bad news right off the bat is there's lots of competition out there. There's lots of us out there. There's lots of people out there who say they're graphic designers. There's lots of people out there who do this sort of thing as a hobby. But the thing is a lot of the competition out there is not great. So that's the good news. I have a friend in HR. He recently told me a quick story about how his company needed to hire a graphic designer. They put out a job posting on Indeed.ca and they got about 200 applications within the first 3 hours. Well, about 90% of those applications, they had never been to design school. Most of them didn't even have a portfolio. And it was just all these unqualified people. So unfortunately, folks are tasked with sifting through a lot of competition that is not great. So good and bad, right? So if you get good first, you're going to have a better time trying to find a good position. The other good thing is most companies need you, like I said, whether they know it or not. A lot of people spend a lot of time trying to do things themselves, trying to get things on Canva. Using Canva will not, you won't be able to trademark your stuff. You're going to run into the problem of, oh, now my store looks exactly like the one down the street because it was made like a template. So graphic design absolutely has so much more value than a business owner trying to do all of his visuals by himself to save money. He will probably end up losing more time in the long run. So, as with any job, a technique that I've always liked to use when going to look for a job is, anybody can throw out resumes on Indeed and LinkedIn and all these job seeking sites all day long sitting on their couch. Anybody can do that. What I think is the best way to do is if you find one or two or five or 10 that you really are interested in, apply online with your resume. But if you can find the place they actually work, the address, go there with a resume in hand. Also ask, hey, I just applied online, but I really wanted to, put a face to the resume and come down and see if I could chat with anybody. And I've always found that that has got me a little more attention and a little more foot in the door than just applying online. Puts a human to the interaction, which I think is always a plus. Also, network. There's business networkings out there. This is possibly more for people who are doing more freelance or working for themselves. But even if you're not, going to networking meetings and asking, hey, I'm looking for a place to hire me as a graphic designer. People who are heavily involved in business networks, they know a lot of other businesses, and they may be able to direct you in the right down the right path. They might know somebody who's looking for you. So there's work from home, WFH. There's contract. There's freelance, like I said. There's being a company. There's just about any way that you could think of employment, a graphic designer can probably do it. Aren't we amazing? So, how about pay? Now you're going to look at these and maybe they seem a little low. I think they seem a little low. I've taken the information from like the Alice website, some of my own experience, some of what I see on job postings. Yes, I believe these are a little low. So let's talk about it just for a sec. Entry level 20 to 25. Yes, with no experience, you can be looking at 20 to 25. I wouldn't accept less than 20 though as an entry. There are plenty of posts out there looking for graphic designers who can also edit video and can code their own website and also make 3D Pixar animations and carry a grand piano up Mount Everest on their back using only their pinky finger. So ignore those. Don't give them any attention. You're not going to get treated well and you're not going to make the money you deserve. 20 to 25 entry, I think, is probably fairly fair. Once you get a little more experience and you can prove your worth, you can prove you know what you're doing, you're an intermediate designer. 25 to 30 is probably also fair. Keeping in mind, this is as an employee who will hopefully also have some kind of benefits. As a senior, I said at least 30 plus. You should not be making anywhere any lower than $30 an hour as a senior designer. There's no way. I would almost say 40. And that's the thing too, is if you're self-employed, there is no cap. You can determine your own rates. You have to remember you have to pay your own taxes, you have to buy your own health insurance, things like that. So you have to think about that. But there is no cap, but you still have to be reasonable, right? A stack of 25 postcards for Christmas to give to somebody, you're not going to charge them 5 grand for it, right? Just because, oh, I can because I own my business. Well, you're not going to have a lot of business if that's the way you do it. So, of course, a little bit of common sense in that area is necessary. But yes, you can determine your value. You can determine what jobs you do, so you can pick ones that have more value and more pay. Um, you can also look at different ways of pricing to clients, such as hourly versus project-based or value-based, which is, for example, you do the same job, but you would quote the CEO of 7-Eleven very differently than the mom and pop shop down the street because there's a different value scale there. So you have a bit more flexibility working for yourself. Now, as with any job, there are things that are not fun, not so attractive. Some things suck. So what sucks about graphic design? Because it sucks to suck. But let's get it out of the way. Now, one of the things that I think kind of sucks, but it's not so bad. Most clients don't know what good design is. They will ask you things like, make my logo so big that it fills the entire page. And while there's lots of reasons in graphic design why you don't want to do that, you're going to have to tell people and clients why some things that they want are a bad decision. So part of graphic design is educating your clients on making good design decisions so that their goals are reached. Some people don't like to hear that. You're going to get pushback sometimes. You're just going to have to sometimes swallow it and make that logo as big as they want and just don't include it as your portfolio piece. Um, there are job posts out there, a lot of them that do not even know what graphic design is. Like I said, we need a graphic designer who can also edit video and code websites. You can apply to those and then have a discussion with them and say, hey, I'm a graphic designer. We do this and we do this and we do this. You also need a video editor, but I'd be happy to be your graphic designer. Some people may be more receptive to that sort of conversation. Some may not. The next is revisions. You are going to do revisions. Do not get too emotionally involved in the first draft that you deliver to a client because 7 times out of 10, they're going to say, okay, that's great, but I'd like you to change this. Or worst case scenario, no, I hate it all. Please start over. So don't get too stuck to what you've done the first time. You're going to have to revise things. And sometimes you're going to have to revise things in a way that you think is not good design. Part of the job. Like I said, don't put it in your portfolio. It's okay. The value versus Canva AI thing, I sort of talked about that a little bit. Canva, not good. If you're a graphic designer and you have your software under a good grasp, there's no reason for you to ever open Canva. I haven't. I have once to looked at it and I probably never will again. I use AI in my workflow. Relying solely on AI to make images and put them out and call that graphic design, no, that's not good. But that's the same with every other industry. We don't want to completely rely on it. We are humans and there needs to be a human element in business. So yes, AI is a tool in part of your workflow, absolutely. As a crutch to hold yourself up, not going to work. The other thing, it can be very fast paced and you can come across some very high expectations from people. So lots of work done. Now they think we just wave a wand and then the magic design happens, but no, it takes time. So you're going to come across that every now and then. Now, if I haven't scared you away from graphic design, trust me, it's not that bad. The last thing I want to say is it's not art. So some people think I'm going to get into graphic design because then I can get paid to do art. Yes and no. Graphic design is really an amalgamation, a combination of art and science. So art is expressive, can be abstract, doesn't necessarily need to be done for a reason. Design, on the other hand, needs to be functional. There has to be a purpose. It's just like the tagline on my logo. Look awesome, but have purpose. And that's the whole point of graphic design is every design decision that you make needs to be made for a reason. Sometimes it's better to think of what can I take away from this design than what can I add to it. Oh, and it looks like I have made a mistake on one of my slides. Ignore the senior at least 30 plus part. Sorry about that. Last one, stick to the principles. If you're ever stuck, am I taking this design too crazy? Am I getting too creative with it? Am I off brand? Stick to the principles. Go back to your Gestalt principles of hierarchy, contrast, all these things you're going to learn in graphic design school. Stick to those thought patterns and your design will be effective. And I always like to talk about my favorite design quote from a famous designer, John Maeda. He says, art is a question to a problem. Design is a solution to a problem. And I find that is the biggest difference. That's what we're doing. We're not just artists making pretty pictures all day. We are communicating for people. So finally, thanks again for being here and listening to all my design blah, blah, blah. I hope it was beneficial to you in some way. And we're going to have a questions period now. So if you missed anything or if you have any questions, anything you'd like to know about design, running a small business, working remotely around the world, working with neurological challenges. I know some of us probably have that experience as well. I have pretty bad ADHD that I'm on medication for. I will have an OCD and a Tourette syndrome diagnosis as well. So I find being able to work at my own pace in my own house, that really helps me in a lot of those areas. And I'm wide open to talk about that if you would like to ask me anything about that as well. No problem. And with that, I'm going to turn off my slides and hand it back over to our wonderful hosts.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Peter. That was such an engaging and dynamic and exciting thing. And I now know how much I don't know about graphic design because Canva intimidates me. So we have had some questions come into the chat. I'm going to start at the beginning to make sure we don't have anything missed. Kat was wondering, do you have to be certified to do this kind of work, or can you just learn the skills?
Great question. Actually, I was going to touch on that, so I'm glad you asked. Um, you don't, it is not a regulated industry to the point that you have to have a degree to be a graphic designer. You can get a graphic design diploma, and you can also get a 4-year graphic design degree, which would be even more in depth than the diploma. Um, Myself and the experiences, my own experiences, and what I've heard from the industry, if you have a great portfolio that showcases you know how to create effective design, but you don't have a diploma, if your portfolio, I think your portfolio is more important than your degree or your diploma. So if you can prove that you know how to think like a designer and you've got some good work, I would hire you. Like if I was looking for a designer to work with, that would be so much more important to me. That being said, I would also probably put a bit of preference on somebody who has at least a little bit of design school because of the theory and the principles that are so important for graphic design. So no, you don't have to. And yes, there are tons of great YouTube tutorials out there to learn all your software and design theory. And if you're the kind of person who learns off of YouTube and does very well, I say go for it, sure. And especially if it's, hard to save up the money for a big diploma, that's not always cheap, right? I would say, yeah, if you feel like you learn well off of YouTube and can do that, sure, go for it. Although, bottom line, I would like to see somebody with a bit of design school. I just think that the things that you learn and the things that they teach you in design school, they help you make the decisions necessary to create effective design. So, yeah, sorry, a bit of a wishy-washy answer there, I guess.
No, that's great. It gives folks lots of different options. For some people, school is not something that they're able to do for a
Yeah,
variety of reasons. So it's nice to know that there are industries where if you learn the skills in the way that works best for you, it's still possible for you to be successful in your career. We have
definitely.
lots and lots of questions coming through the chat. And I do want to encourage folks, if you want to stick your hand up as well to ask your question, that's cool. Otherwise, I'm just going to go through the chat here and ask the questions on your behalf. So the next question we have from Kyle says, what are some key talking points to use when writing a cover letter for a graphic design job?
Good question, Kyle. Thanks for asking. So when I write a cover letter, if I'm a proposal or anything like that, something that I would like to touch on is say in your own words, what's your approach to design? So for myself, I like to say my approach to design is based on the fundamental principles of design theory. I need to make sure that my client's design has a function and a purpose and it doesn't just look great. That's the sort of thing that I like to put in my cover letter or proposals because I feel like they're going to want to know that you have a background and you know how to make good design decisions, no matter what the brand is going to look like or who your client is or what their industry is. Things like that. Also, general stuff that you're passionate about what you do and you're eager and you're willing to learn more. I think design is a very quickly evolving industry, especially now that tech is evolving so quickly. And there's new workflows, new things to incorporate in your workflow. Definitely that you are willing and able to be up on new trends, new things in design that are going to, benefit your career, that you like to learn new things and keep progressing. That would definitely be a plus to hear if someone's looking for a designer.
Awesome. So interjecting some of your personality, some of your foundational beliefs around graphic design, and your willingness to continually learn. Those are
Great. Yeah,
great
great
tips.
for summing up. I tend to blab a little bit, so you can cut me short if you need to.
No, you're doing great. I like to clarify for myself my own understanding and give folks some tidbits as well.
Very well.
So our next question comes from Christina and says, coming from a new country with no Canadian experience, what do employers think about that, and what can we do to get that experience?
Interesting question. Okay, so like I said, some of this stuff is going to be a little difficult coming from me because I'm not technically an employer. I work by myself. I have brought other people on to help me with projects before. And I do know what, art directors are looking for because, I have a few of them in my network, I think. Um, so coming from a new country with no Canadian experience, I would say, I mean, bottom line, this is probably obvious. A fundamental ability to work in English is obviously going to be, if there's too much of a language hurdle, that's going to be difficult, I think, in any job. But I also think Canadians generally are fairly understanding and willing to, you know, help with that area. I know I would be. Language is not necessarily, as long as there's something there, it wouldn't necessarily be a thing where I would be like, well, no way, they don't speak perfect English. You might be getting rid of some great talent. So I would think, let me see what we do, but get that experience. I don't in graphic design, if you have experience in graphic design from another country, if anything, that would be a plus. You're bringing a fresh perspective to a fresh new cultural look at design. This is going to be something that other designers don't have. Maybe play that to your strength. Like I spent 10 years in Japan working there, and that has definitely influenced my personality, my own personal culture. So I will add that in any sort of job interview that hey, I bring a bit of an international perspective to these things. So if anything, I think that could be a plus. Um, if it's a general question about getting experience of graphic design in graphic design before getting your first job, the best advice I could give you is reach out to anybody you know involved in business. Ask them if you can do any pro bono work for them. Hey, I just graduated. I'm eager to get ready to go, but I don't have much experience. Can I do this job for you for free? I did that when I first got out of school. It was a great help. Do practice designs. Just make something up. Be like, oh, it's a plumbing company called Snake Plumbers, and make a logo and make their whole look and make a whole brand identity. It's great practice. And then you'll have a portfolio piece that you can show somebody. I hope that answers your question, Christina.
Thanks, Peter. And if I can also add to that or extend the question, if somebody is looking to create that portfolio or make those connections early in their career, maybe get some of that Canadian experience, are there graphic design associations or clubs or groups that get together that somebody might be able to go network in?
That's a good question, and that's something I should probably look further into as well. I know I'm a member of just forums, like online forums and things like that. So just like Facebook groups, even LinkedIn groups that Graphic Designers Lounge on LinkedIn is one that I have been part of for a little while. A lot of people will post their designs, their concerns about designs. Their questions about designs they've made, looking for advice, things like that. And other designers will come in and comment and share opinions and things like that. That was always a nice one for me. Um, yeah, good call. That would be worth a good Google search. That is one I'm sorry I'm a little unprepared for, but a
No,
good Google
that's
search
okay.
could possibly bring up some nice groups out there. Yeah.
Perfect. And Christina, did you have a follow-up to that question?
Yeah, thanks for that answering, Peter. and Jamie. Yeah, actually, I did find an organization called RGD. It stands for Registered Graphic Design,
No.
and I just happened to find them on YouTube, and they have their own website. And I
Hmm.
did reach out to them for an information session, but I didn't also receive like any reply from them. So actually,
Oh.
another following up question is, um, how much can I continue to reach out to them until I have to accept that, okay, they might not respond.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, so do you have any advice on that as well?
Yeah, good question. Ah, boy, there's a lot of different people and businesses out there. Generally, I think if I was going to be talking to any kind of school or client or other business or other worker of any sort, I would probably reach out once, wait a little while. If I didn't hear anything, I would reach out one more time and say, "Hey, I'm just following up, looking forward to, seeing if there's anything we can talk about, blah, blah, blah." And I think if I didn't hear anything back after the second time, I'd probably just move on.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Because I mean, you would want to give people your time of day if they're looking for something for you. So I think we should expect that from other people as well. A couple of tries, but if people get busy and they forget things, that totally happens. Happens for me. But I would say, yeah, give it a couple tries, and if they're not biting, yeah, maybe try the next one.
Thanks for that.
Sure.
I think it's also important to note that um, don't take it personally.
Yeah, yeah.
People are so busy. Often with mentorability, when we're reaching out to folks, I don't even expect a response with the first reach out.
Hmm.
If somebody's going to respond, usually it's on that reminder email.
Hmm.
Sometimes I might reach out a third time, but I don't, write them off forever. If I run into that person or somebody from that company at another event, I don't say like, "Oh, well, screw you guys." It was like, "Oh,
Hey,
now I have an opportunity."
right. Hey, you don't answer emails.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's
Awesome.
true.
The next question we have from Michelle is, Peter, do you have any recommendations of a couple of graphic design programs?
Good question. Well, I mean, I can recommend the one that I took because I think it was good and my teachers were awesome. I took mine through, it's called CDED, which is the Center for Distance Education College. It's CDED College in Nova Scotia. They have, like I said, it used to be a 2-year program, was condensed into a 1-year program. They will run you through your graphic design diploma within 1 year exactly. It's fairly intense. You have a certain workload that you need to complete every week, and if you fall behind, it's going to get really difficult, and you'll get put on academic probation, all that stuff. So there is a syllabus that you have to follow and a curriculum there. But the teachers were fantastic. They taught all the things that I believe are necessary for graphic design, and I just thought it was a really good program. So yeah, and no, they're not paying me to say that. Otherwise, Satori Graphics on YouTube. It's just a YouTube channel of a graphic designer who tells you lots of things about graphic design theory, logo design, brand design, just how to approach design. Satori Graphics is a great channel that I find a lot of good design information from. So if you're into just looking at other designers talk about it on YouTube, I think that's a great place to start.
How do you spell that?
Satori, Satori. And I
Satori. Okay, thank
Yeah, I
you.
believe it's just Satori Design. It could be Satori Graphic Design. Anyway, he's a guy with a red beard, and yeah, you'll find him. Oh,
Awesome. Oh,
one more thing. Sorry. If you're looking for some inspiration, this is kind of what pushed me to take the graphic design degree. There's also a YouTube channel called Benny Productions. He's mainly a Photoshop artist, but what he does is he realistifies things. So what that means is he'll get children's drawings sent in, and then he'll use Photoshop to make them into like real monsters, or he'll go and do these Photoshop comp contests where two people have to use the same pieces of imagery and cut them up and make a picture with them, and they always end up different. It's so much fun to watch, and he's so good. You will be like, I want to do that.
Awesome. Thanks, Peter.
Yeah.
Michelle does have some follow-up questions about looking for specific programs. Michelle, maybe we can talk offline about that. If you have some follow-up questions, we can try and find some more resources for you as well. Um, Next one was also a question from Christina, looking to build up and improve your skills. Peter, you already talked about that a little bit by, practice working on your portfolio, making up a
Mm.
company. But also, and related to the conversation we were having just before this session started, is do you need to have that extra UX, UI skills to get work?
That's a good question. No, you don't. I'm gonna say no, you don't. But that's UI UX seems to be a lot more of a bit of a niche area of graphic design. Actually, Susanna may be able to tell you a little more about this. I think she's quite involved in the industry. But UI UX is a lot of it's a lot more tied in with tech, user interfaces, app creation, things like this. Now, as a designer, you could possibly be pulled onto a UX UI team in order to do the designing part of things, but and hopefully have someone else who is doing the coding. Um, and you would work on a team doing that sort of thing, bringing your design expertise to it. That would be ideal. Um, but I don't touch a lot of UX UI stuff. Not to say that I wouldn't, but there's so many different areas of graphic design. You can either pick an area, whether it be illustration, whether it's motion design, UX, UI, brand design, logo design. You can pick an area and really focus on it and become niche in there and do only that. Or you can be a generalist. I'm a generalist. I do most of the areas of graphic design. And there's a bit of debate over which is better, right? If you're niche, yeah, you can pinpoint and you can charge more money and because you're a specialist. But I mean, you're kind of also cutting out a huge part of your industry that is potential income too. It's Susanna, if you had anything to add to that about UI, UX, that might be great.
Yeah, I think like you were saying that there is definitely overlap, and that even UI UX is kind of under the whole umbrella of human-centered design. And so there's different avenues there too. Like there's service design when you're looking at like the services of how people interact, like customer experience design. There's user experience design research. There's like the graphical user interfaces that you're designing too. So again, a generalist. I know from UX and UI and also product design, it's really like how do you think, like how do you approach problems and how do you understand, and then how do you take the design principles and how do you take these other principles and apply them to the way that you're thinking and creating your designs. I think kind of speaking to what Peter was talking to is if you have like some understanding of it, and if you're looking to work within a role where you're going to be interacting with other people that are doing UX and UI, it can really help for that communication piece so that you can share common language and understanding. So I think that's always like a great thing to be able to do. But yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Susanna. And thank you, Peter, as well. Um, Another question that we had is surrounding neurodiversity. Like you mentioned, Peter, you are neurodivergent yourself. How do you find that works with employers or with clients? Are they generally fairly accepting? Do you mask yourself a lot? How does that work?
That's such a good question. So my answer is it's difficult for me to say from the employer point of view. In my experience, I picked the freelance entrepreneur, work for yourself route largely because of neurodiversity. Is very hard for me to stay in someone else's box all the time and work within their hours. My optimum working hours on any given day may change. I may be inspired at 8 p.m. one day, at 8 a.m. the next day. And if I can make the choice to work when I'm functioning the best. That's so much more valuable to me. So I've gone and I've said, hey, no employers. I'm gonna do it my way. And yes, that has been extremely helpful for me. There are extra challenges that come with that. It takes a lot of executive function to maintain a client base, run a business, even if it is a small solo business. So that's something to weigh as well. If you think you're going to function better when someone else is making the structure, um, it might be better to look for an employer route. I do think that there is a lot more talk about neurodiversity happening these days. So I think more so than in the past, you are probably more likely to find employers that are willing to work with accommodations. I've heard a lot of people say, don't necessarily disclose it in the interview. Wait till you've been hired and then say, oh, by the way, I've got really bad ADHD. So if I'm late, sorry, like, well, obviously with a little more tact than that, but, um, uh, you know, um, hard for me to say. I shied away from that area because it was difficult for me to work for other employers. But fortunately, with graphic design, there's a lot of different ways you can do it. You can be contract, you can be freelance, you can be a temp, you can be a full-time employee, you can be a part-time employee. So there are lots of options. I know if I was hiring people, neurodivergent people, of course I don't want to pigeonhole, but like there tends to be a lot of creative people in our circle. We think differently sometimes, and that can be a very big positive for something like graphic design. I know my OCD is awesome with graphic design because everything needs to be aligned perfectly in graphic design, and you better go check and make sure again that it's perfectly aligned, because if it's not, you're gonna get in trouble, and that's something I do anyway. So it kind of, you know, uh, hard to say. Depends on the employer is probably what I'd like to conclude with. It depends on your employer, but I think in a creative field, you're probably more likely to see people willing to talk about accommodations than say something like, I don't know, drilling for oil. I've never done that.
That's great. Thank you, Peter.
Yeah.
And related to, your own business or, trying to get business, trying to get clients, that sort of thing. Do you have any networking tips?
Oh, sure. I mean, it helps if I mean, like I'm quite a hyper guy, so I get out there and I chat to people quite easily. So that's helpful. There's free business networking groups and events in most major cities, probably a lot of small towns as well. Just going to them, showing up at them, and becoming a face that people see at business networking meetings, being on top of mind for these people because when it comes into their life, hey, do you know a graphic designer? They go, oh yeah, there's that guy who's always at the networking meeting, or that person who's always at the networking meeting, or whatever. So yes, you can. There's paid ones that you pay a membership fee, and you probably get a little different set of values from it. Where you can be referring to each other back and forth and things like that. There's a whole bunch of them. I'm a member of a couple of them. There's BNI is a popular one. BX is another one. There's the Chamber of Commerce that puts on all kinds of networking events. I believe that's where I met my introduction to this program, was at a chamber event. So yeah, go out there, just talk to anybody, tell them you're a graphic designer, tell them you love what you do, tell them you're looking for work. Um, be friendly, be polite, you know, things like that are gonna they'll get you into networks, and people will want to talk to you if you're there, and just being open, I guess.
A couple other questions that we had come up are, you'd mentioned having to convince sometimes business owners that they need graphic design. Do you have a pitch that you give to maybe small or medium-sized businesses?
Ooh, I have an elevator pitch that kind of tells what I do,
Yeah, let's hear it.
I suppose. But it's not so much, it's a sales pitch or telling somebody why they need my services. I basically just tell everybody that everybody needs a graphic designer, because if you're not communicating to your specific demographic and your audience correctly, efficiently, and on brand all the time, you're losing clientele, you're losing money, you're losing revenue, you're losing brand integrity and recognition, and your business is just not functioning optimally. So if you have a designer who is taking care of all of that for you, not only do you have so much more time on your hands to run your business and do what you do, but you've got somebody that you can trust is communicating to the public properly for you or to the other businesses properly on your behalf. So yeah, it's of immense value to people, whether they know it or not. And like I said, some businesses just aren't in the position yet to be outsourcing. I wasn't in the position to outsource anything for a long time. So it can be tough to get to that point, right? We need to build up. Yeah, no, make a fun elevator pitch just to tell people what you do. Sure, mine is put some of your personality in there, something interesting about you that makes you unique because it's all about personal branding these days. You don't have to be one of the biggest mistakes I made when I first started networking was I would go in a suit and you know what? I wasn't wearing this hat. I had my hair tied back all slicked and everything. I was like, I need to look like Mr. Business Guy because now I own a business. It was like, no, I'm not a banker. I'm not a financial advisor who maybe wants to dress in a suit and would be more fitting. But I'm a musician and a graphic designer, so why would I show up in a tuxedo? You know what I mean? So I kind of threw that away after a while because the leader of the networking group for the Chamber of Commerce, he would always introduce me to people in the group as, "Hey, this is Peter Klassen. He's got a JUNO Award," or "Hey, this is Peter Klassen. He speaks Japanese," or something. And was always thinking, that has nothing to do with my business. I'm here to talk about my business, kind of thing. But then I realized, hey, this guy's smart. He's a pro people connector and he knows what he's doing. He's giving me something to talk about that the other people in the room don't have. Find that thing in yourself. What is something that's, unique that every other business owner doesn't have, or every other employer or employee doesn't have, and make that part of your personal branding. This is me. And this is what I do. Why do I do it? Who am I? What do I do? And why do I do it? And, if you can find something interesting to put into each one of those three categories, people are going to want to hear your story.
That's amazing, Peter. We have so many questions that we're not going to be able to get to all of them. We might have to do like a whole second session or something with you, Peter.
Just a question session.
But last question I wanted to get to is you had mentioned using AI yourself. And so, not for all of it, but for little parts of it. And so one of the questions that came in was how do you use what AI platforms or what prompts do you like to use when you're using AI?
Man, there is a whole world of AI out there. Now, if I'm going to expand, I guess, a little bit on what to use within AI and how to use it in graphic design, I would say things like just going online and getting a Midjourney account and being able to generate images is not the best approach. There is a way, if you're going to be using AI in a graphic design workflow, you're going to want to have control over it. Because if you don't have very good control over the AI, you're going to end up back in Photoshop fixing it after anyway, which most of the time you'll end up doing because AI is not perfect. So getting some kind of back-end AI, like a node-based program, like Comfy UI or something like that, is an interface that is used for that. A bit of a learning curve again, but if you really want to have that control over what you're creating with AI and how you're creating with it, diving a little deeper than the surface, online websites where you pay for credits and you can just generate images, may not be the best. You still can. Like I've done jobs for people before where they're, hey, I need an image of this with my logo and message in it somehow. So yeah, okay, you make the image with your AI and then you do the typography and you do the rest of it with your Illustrator, your Photoshop or whatever. But another thing that I found recently too was, combining, taking a photo of something, applying a texture to it using AI, not generating the image with AI, but applying a texture to it with AI that gives you something that would take you an hour to create that texture in Photoshop. So it's more time-saving things, I think, that AI is good for. It's like, oh, I could spend an hour doing this in Photoshop, or I could do it this way and combine both photography AI and then touching it up on Photoshop after. You've used 3 different techniques there to come up with a design. So you're not fully reliant on AI at all. Things like that. As prompts, I'm not a prompt doctor and I'm not qualified to tell you what kind of prompts work better in what kind of AI engine. There's a lot of trial and error in AI, figuring out what works and what doesn't to make things look the way you want. But there's so much on YouTube. Also, if you're looking for things to learn about that, my approach is always, can I do this without AI, without eating my butt for lunch because it took me too long? If the answer is no, then I might try and use some AI to speed up my workflow. That's mostly my approach to using AI in graphic design. And as you become more comfortable with your software and things like that, you'll start to see areas where you're going to be thinking, oh, it'd be really nice if I could save some time here. Things like that. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we are at 3 o'clock. For the folks who didn't have their questions answered, I will see if I can find some resources, maybe reach out to Peter and get some background information that I can share with you folks. And I'll include that in the email afterwards. But for now, thank you everyone so much for coming in with your questions. And thank you so much to Peter for giving us this insight into graphic design.
Yeah, thanks again for having me, and thanks everyone for listening. I really hope you find something that you love within graphic design. It's a wonderful job, and if you're a creative person, it's really good to be able to be creative every day.
Thank you so much. I'm just wondering, Jamie, if you want to